If we get above 1 million cases, Richard, we're really talking about reversing all the great things that have been happening on the continent for the last 10, 15 years. You know, over 5.5% growth rate even during the period of 2008 to 2013. We hope that people respond because of the humanitarian needs, but there is self-interest here. Look, if this goes to the point of affecting the entire African continent, nobody will be unaffected.
Fair to say that as America and other major world cities and governments come to grips with the growing Ebola crisis, we rarely, if ever, consider more than the human cost. How about the actual dollar cost? And a disease that is pushing African economies to the breaking point, along with the impact it could have right here in America. Let's welcome back to MidPoint, Professor of Finance at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, Campbell Harvey joins us. Campbell, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great to be back on the show.
Let's talk again about what we just heard coming in, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, pushing economies in the region to the breaking point. Guinea says they need $1.2 billion to combat the virus and for budget support following the death of 800 people in the country. We don't usually think about looking to West Africa and how it may affect our economy here, but is it not fair to say that we are sitting on something here that if it reaches Europe and other major banking centers of the world, we are looking at a real potential for disaster economically around the globe?
Indeed. Actually, we're seeing it right now in Dallas. You know, what can happen when you don't really take an outbreak like this seriously. So people consider this like an African problem, but as this multiplies, it's not just Africa. It has to spread. So Europe and the US are vulnerable. So we're now paying the price of not responding with greater speed to the crisis in Africa. The people in Africa, you're exactly right, are paying, it's a devastating event for them. They potentially are the engine of growth. They're the last frontier emerging market. As China slows down, we look to Africa to carry the global economy. But now they've taken a huge hit, both in terms of human lives and in terms of their economic welfare. And who knows how long it's going to take to recover from this.
Well, let's then put it to this as a growing economy. You are exactly right. So many people say that about Western Africa. But the people in America would like to know, Campbell, how does it affect us? Because let's face it, if it doesn't get into our wallets, doesn't get into our gas tank and what we have to put into our refrigerator every day, we don't think much about it. So how could it affect Americans?
Okay, well, number one thing, Africa is very important in terms of who we trade with. Not just in terms of the total amount of trade today, but the projection for trade. And that means buying goods from us as well as the reverse. So it is a very important market that's been disrupted. But more importantly, this is not just about the economics of what's happening in Africa. It is about the potential economics that could happen in the US. If we're unable to control the outbreak in Dallas, then you're going to see a replication of the chaos that really we've seen in Africa. So I think that we have to look at both of these factors.
Well, let me ask this about a minute we have left, then we'll take a break. But with regard to Europe, the economy in Europe is already teetering in so many ways. There's so much discourse now about who spends what, how they spend it, and who's going broke next. Is it fair to say that if Ebola were to strike and to start spreading in Britain, in France, in places like this, the major areas, that could be a tipping point for those economies and then eventually affect us as well?
This is a classic point in time of the so-called risk on, risk off. And if you look at the circumstances today, you've got ISIS in the Middle East, you've got Europe and Germany, the leading country, effectively in a recession. You've got China slowing. You've got commodity complex down 20% this year. You've got a flight into U.S. Treasury bonds, which drove the yield today below 2% for a while. The U.S. stock market is plunging. This is basically a risk-off situation. People are bailing out of risky bets. You've got the Ebola situation making things even worse. Put that all together, and it's no surprise that people are retreating into the safest possible instrument, which is the U.S. Treasury bond.
All right, now stand by a few moments here. Other side of the break with Professor Campbell Harvey. More than a few solid reasons why we cannot ignore other future disasters. And yes, I know you're going to roll your eyes on this one, but it could mean the infamous asteroid strike. Trust me, we're being serious. And later this hour, a growing segment of working wealth in America that cannot be avoided. It's coming up here on MidPoint.